Why does it feel like I'm stuck in career limbo? Why am I waiting for someone else to notice my value? Why does job searching feel like throwing resumes into a black hole? Am I missing something, or is it time to change the game? If these questions are running through your mind, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Hire Me Please Career Podcast. I'm Gemma Lopez, career coach and recruiting expert, and this season is all about taking back control of your career. No more waiting for permission, no more playing small. I'm here to help you ditch the doubt, advocate for yourself, and land a role that excites you. From navigating career pivots to negotiating what you're really worth, we're uncovering the real, unfiltered strategies that you need to know. No gatekeeping here. So, if you're ready to go from feeling stuck to thriving in your career, let's do this. Welcome back to Hire Me Please. I'm your host, Gemma Lopez, and today we are going to talk about career test drives, but not in the way that you've heard it before. So for those of you at the director, the VP, or even my C-suite friends, I know that you're not just looking for another job. You're looking for the right next move, one that aligns with your expertise, your values, and long-term career vision. But here's what I also know. What looks good on paper doesn't always feel right in real life. And that's why I am a big believer in test driving your next career move before you make a decision. So that is essentially what a career test drive is all about, seeing if the next step actually fits before making the leap. So today, I will walk you through the strategic ways that you can explore new opportunities, new industries, or even leadership roles without making a blind commitment. But first, before we jump in, I have to tell you about my client, Jason. So Jason was so done with his corporate job. He had the nice VP title, the multiple six-figure salary, those amazing RSUs. But every Monday morning, he felt like he was dragging himself into battle. Like the culture at his workplace was so toxic, it was so political, and he was just ready to go. So when a hot new startup came knocking, offering him chief growth officer role, he thought, oh my God, this is my perfect job. This is the way out. I finally get to build something from the ground up and get away from these politics and this drama. Well, 6 months later, Jason called me and said, I think I made a huge mistake. What happened? What do you think happened? Well, the role sounded perfect on paper, but in reality, the fast-paced startup culture, the constant pivots, the lack of resources, things just always kind of being in flux, and that joy of building the airplane while you're flying, it was nothing like what he had imagined. Jason was coming from a very large corporation where it was very established, very structured, and he was not used to or did not like, actually, when he found out after working there for 6 months, all of the things that come with working in ambiguity, working with limited resources, just things changing every day. And he was miserable. And that's what I want to help you avoid, because when you're a senior level professional, be it director, VP, or above, your next move isn't about just getting another job. It's about making a power move that actually fits. And the best way to do that? Yep, you got it. Test drive your career before you commit. So let's talk about why this matters. So when you've already built a successful career, switching lanes isn't about finding a job. It's more about making a strategic, high-stakes decision. A career test drive helps you avoid a misaligned move, because what if the leadership culture doesn't fit your style? What if the scope of the role is narrower than what you expected? It also expands your executive network. A test drive isn't just about research, it's about planting seeds for future opportunities. It can also help you negotiate from a position of strength because when you have firsthand insights, you can ask for the right compensation, the right team support, and get the right leadership role. And I will tell you, so many executives jump into a new role based on the company reputation, the salary, the branding, only to realize 6 months in that it's not the right fit. In fact, one study from the Harvard Business Review found that more than 60% of leaders who transitioned to a new role felt unprepared for the realities of their job. 60%. Wow, that's a lot of people. Another study by LinkedIn found that 64% of professionals who switched industries wish they had done more research before making the leap. Translation: a lot of professionals jump into roles based on assumptions. Now, it's easy to think, I know this industry, I will figure it out, or they're going to be very transparent with me in the recruiting process and tell me all about the job, or the job title is a logical next step, or I've done something similar before, I'll be fine. Like, it's easy to tell yourself these stories, but the truth is, what looks good on paper can feel very different in practice. So, today I'm breaking down 5 ways to test drive your next career move before making that commitment. So let's start with strategy number 1: strategic informational interviews. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Gemma, I am not a 25-year-old trying to network my way into my first job. I do not need to do informational interviews. Or you're thinking, oh, girl, I already do informational interviews. And I get it. But here is the thing: at your level, you don't do informational interviews, you have high level strategic conversations. And these conversations, they need to go deeper than tell me about your job. Instead, focus on what's the real leadership challenge in this industry? How is success measured at the leadership level here? What are the unspoken culture dynamics at this company? What are you literally freaking out about that causes you to lose sleep at night? That's a really good question. What are they stressed about? What is the worst thing that they hate about their industry? If they could change one thing about their role, what would it be? Just asking the right questions to really uncover, is this going to be something that I want to walk into? Or am I good where I'm at, right? And that's just one way of looking at it, but really try to think deeper into, okay, more about the job, because the job is a job. We talked about this in the last episode. Sales is sales, project management is project management. Executive leadership is executive leadership. You are going to see more of the nuances on the culture, the way that they approve requests and budgets, and how they handle their finances and P&L, what their goals are, how often they're shifting priorities, how they're pivoting, what they do when clients churn, like all of the little intricacies that you can think of that you want to know. How are my peers going to handle this? And how does the founder or the CEO of the company, how does he or she handle this? And what is their philosophy? Do they invest in their people? Are their people happy? So really try and think more about what you really like about your current role slash industry and what you really are striving to get more of. So the next part is you got to find the right people to talk to. How do we find the right people? Well, it's very easy. We have LinkedIn, but just some food for thought and things to think about. Use executive networks. There's a bunch of industry groups out there, and just make connections. Warm introductions rather than spamming cold outreach always works. Focus on leaders, C-suite, board members, just top decision makers, because they see things differently from mid-level professionals. And instead of just learning from them, position yourself as a peer, because you are a peer, right? And I think that was one of the fun things that when I started my own business, I realized that other founders, CEOs, they're my peers. So think of yourself as a peer because you are, and engage in high level conversations about trends and strategy and leadership. And here's a pro tip for you: frame your outreach as market research for your next move rather than just job seeking, because leaders are far more likely to engage when they see the conversation as strategic versus transactional. So I'll give you an example. I had a client, Sarah, and she was considering moving from a corporate VP role to a chief revenue officer position at a startup. She was excited. It felt like a natural next step, but I challenged her. I was like, okay, before you say yes to this one position that your friend recommended you to, talk to at least three other CROs. And she did. And guess what? She found out that the startup role that they were chasing her for, that her friend recommended, it was like nothing that she had imagined. Instead of high level growth strategies, it was fixing broken sales teams and putting out major fires every single day, working 80-hour weeks at like best. They were like pushing 100-hour weeks, and that was just like not what she wanted. So she learned her lesson. If she hadn't done those calls, she would have jumped into a role that wasn't the right fit. So, your move here is to identify at least three people that have the job that you want and ask them, what's one thing about this role that people don't realize until they're in it, in addition to all those other questions that you might have. But that one question alone could save you years of regret. Now, the next strategy is executive job shadowing. But you can think about it as putting yourself in the right rooms or immersing yourself in the space. Obviously, you're not going to shadow someone like a college intern, but you can immerse yourself in the leadership space before you commit to it. And here's how: you can attend invite only roundtables, listen to how other leaders and peers in your target space think and operate. You can join an advisory board or committee, and this would put you in the same room as different decision makers. You could also sit on industry panels and leadership summits. And you can also attend these things and observe how they discuss challenges. What are they? What are the strategies? And how are leadership's stances on these things as the industry kind of moves and changes? Another example here is my other client, David. He's a senior director at a Fortune 500 company. He thought he wanted to move into private equity. So he started sitting in on two private equity leadership roundtables, just listening, just observing. And after just a few times, he called me and said, no, nope, I do not want this. These guys are working their tails off. And at this stage in my life, this is not what I'm signing up for. And that one move saved him from chasing the wrong goal. And in fact, by listening to others, really realizing what they do all day, what their problems are, what kinds of strategies and fires they were dealing with, he was able to really identify, oh, this is a lot more than what I want to do. So, one thing you can do is just find one roundtable, one board opportunity, or one leadership event in your industry and start making moves. I really like to go to at least one conference or roundtable, webinar, or just one professional development event at least every quarter. Depending on the year, I would go to multiple depending on where you're located. I think it's really cool. There's so many virtual ones now, so you can pretty much like tap into any webinars that might be happening. There's a lot of different lunch and learns, but really just there's a lot of information at your fingertips if you would just look, and you would really find a lot of information just by attending these to see what they're being talked about, what trends, what strategies, what's the ups and downs, what are they focusing on, what are the company goals. You'll get a lot of insight just from being in attendance. So the third strategy is testing a new career through advisory work or consulting. Now, if you want to see what leading in a new space really feels like, don't just research it, step into it. So this is where you would join an advisory board. Another thing you can do is do short-term consulting projects. There's a bunch of consulting projects out there. you can definitely kind of tap in. There's a lot of need for that. And you would look for these consulting projects just as you would look for a job. So you can look for these on LinkedIn. There's also some management consulting companies that you can sign up with, and they can send you different consulting projects to see, you can put your preferences in there. So that's an option. Or you can act as a mentor for startups or executives in emerging industries. My client, Melissa, who is a VP of marketing, she wanted to pivot into sustainability. So instead of applying for jobs and just networking and looking into different things, she really wanted to kind of try before she buy, right? So she became an advisor for two different sustainability startups. Within the year, she had an offer for a senior sustainability role. No job search was required. She got tapped on the shoulder for this. And she didn't have to guess if this transition made sense. Once she started volunteering in this way, she loved it. So, one thing you can do is identify one low risk way to engage in this potential next move before making a shift. Now, to kind of talk a little bit more about just what to avoid, I'm just going to talk through some common mistakes. The first one is jumping into a new industry without testing the leadership culture. As I mentioned, jobs typically are the same industry to industry, but there are nuances there. But one thing that is severely different in a lot of different industries is the leadership culture and just the culture in general. But I think leadership culture is very important. What do they value? Is it a people first organization? Is it an organization where they want to break things and move fast? Is it something where they're scrappy and building the airplane as it flies? There's just a different culture. And so identifying, okay, where am I at this stage in my career? What am I excited for? Am I excited to build something from scratch, even if that means making things up as I go? Or do I want something more structured? I want to take more of a backseat. I want to work on maybe developing my people or, kind of doing these more thought leadership type things where you're writing more articles and you're speaking in engagements. Like everyone is different with what they want. So really thinking about what do you really want out of the next 3 to 5 years in your career, or even like right now, what do you want in the next year? And really thinking about, okay, what kind of a culture would support me in this? The next one is not getting clarity on what the day-to-day actually looks like. This is an issue because if you are just looking at job descriptions and you're just looking at company culture pages and you're not really talking to people, especially at the company that you're looking to work at, you will not know what it is like and what they're focused on and what their projects are without actually having that conversation. So you could be thinking, oh my God, this is such an innovative company. Their branding is on point. I love their products. But then you get there and everything is like full red tape. It's hard to get anything done. There's so many hoops to jump over, so many bottlenecks, so many things. And maybe the team isn't cohesive. They're not working together. Everyone works in silos. For some people, this sounds like an absolute dream. For you, it might sound like an absolute nightmare. So that's why it's just important to identify what do you want and what do you need at this stage of your career. And finally, the last common mistake to avoid is thinking that an industry switch is just a title swap. It is absolutely not. Like I mentioned, yeah, your title can remain the same. You might have the same overall responsibilities. However, processes, culture, priorities, there's just so many nuances in every industry. And I've worked in a lot of industries. They're all different. They all have their different cultures. They all have their different nuances. So you might be doing the same type of work, but really that's only one piece of the pie. If you're only thinking about what your skills are and what your actual job is and what you'll be doing on a day-to-day basis and not taking into consideration how decisions are being made, how things are getting approved, how spending is being allocated, benefits, perks, like just even representation in business resource groups, like the diversity, equity, and inclusion is such a big one right now with a lot of companies taking that back. think about the things that are really important to you because that is really going to make such a difference. And these mistakes are what lead to very expensive and emotionally draining regrets. So, all in all, a practical way that you can kind of get started on test driving this next move is the first step is defining your actual move. What do you actually want to test drive? What do you actually want to try? Is there something that you've always wanted to participate in or any type of project that you've wanted to be in that you haven't really had a chance to kind of get into in your day job that you want to try to see if that's something that you want to pivot to more, full time? Define that actual move. Once you have clarity, it'll be a lot easier to accomplish the next steps. Once you have that and your next move is defined and you know what you want to actually test drive, the next step is to set up at least 3 high-level conversations with other leaders in this target area. I would say talk to 3 different people in different areas if possible or different companies, but usually having 3 conversations, that's like the minimum, I would say. And then let's just say you're comparing 2 different options or 3 different options. I would say choose 3 people to have high-level strategic conversations with for each role or industry that you're looking into. The next step after you have these conversations is to get into the right leadership spaces. This is the roundtables, the summits, the advisory boards, kind of getting yourself a step closer and kind of getting more into the day to day, into the space, and really to kind of learn more from other leaders in this area. The next step after that is taking on a small project, an advisory role, or consulting gig to just get real world exposure and real world experience. And the final step is to reflect. Did this experience confirm or challenge what you had thought initially? If it confirmed that you really want to take this move and you want to make this change, awesome. You have the evidence that you need. You've done thorough research. You know that most likely you are really aligned with what you're looking for. Maybe it's the opposite though. And after doing all of these steps, you realize actually this is not aligned at all with what I thought. It's exactly the opposite of what I want. Now you have some data to go back and say, okay, this may not be what you wanted, but what did you gather throughout this research process? Do you feel like, okay, now you have enough evidence to go back and see what you do want? Because you might think, oh my gosh, I wasted all of this time. It ended up being a bust. I don't even want to do these things. But that's just one perspective. You can also look at it as, wow, I dodged a bullet. I did not just make a whole career pivot into something that ultimately I never would have thought that I'd hate, but I just do not like this. And now I'm much more clear on what I do want to do. So take everything as learning and as research. That's how I would recommend it. These are all experiments. And the looser that you hold these goals and the more flexible you are, just the more fun it's going to be. Because let's be real, work is not that fun, right? Like you might like what you do, but inherently work is not like, oh my God, work is so fun, but it can be. And if you try and gamify it and think of what you can gather from this rather than, oh my God, I'm wasting time. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done this. And just beating yourself up. No, pat yourself on the back. Pat yourself on the back for taking some action, getting clarity, and trying something new. Even if it doesn't result in what you ultimately thought it would result in, don't be so tied to outcomes. Really, the outcome should be, okay, at the end of this experiment, at the end of this career test drive, do I want to move forward in this direction or do I want to try something else? And that's in success of itself because any clarity that you have is just bringing you one step closer to the ideal dream job. But honestly, your next career move, it's too important to leave to chance. So you have to test drive it, explore it, make sure it's the right move before you commit. And that is where I will leave you with today. If this episode has got you thinking, send me a message on LinkedIn. Tell me, what is your next move? What are you thinking about doing? How are you going to test drive this? I really want to know. And if you want help putting these ideas into action, I would love to chat with you. Book a free 30-minute strategy call with me at the link in notes or at mycoachgemma.com. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next week. Hey, friend. If this episode gave you an aha moment, I want to hear about it. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and tell me your biggest takeaway. Or you can even send a message right here in the show notes. And if you're done spinning your wheels and ready to take action, real action, towards a career that excites you, let's talk about it. You can book a free career strategy call with me at mycoachgemma.com. And let's get you moving forward towards a career that you love.